Some heroes in Mobile Legends don't need to be buffed in order to catch up in today's meta. Their skills and abilities are just too much to go unnoticed. Some of them are really underrated or underappreciated. So I decided to make a series of these heroes that are old enough and can still dominate the game as of today's era of Mobile Legends. And for today's episode, I'd like to start to which I think is the most outstanding of them all, no other than Mr. Overall himself, Chou. I called Chou Mr. Overall mainly because of his ability to do many things in a game. He could be a fighter, an assassin, a pusher, or even a tank, just like what Lusty did in Game 7 of the championships of M2. And yes, he can dominate the game whether you use him in either of those roles. Also, he has these excellent skills that make him so unique. So in short, he can do almost anything. That's why he is the #1 candidate in this category, because you can't just underestimate his abilities to win a game. Anyway, let's go. So without further ado, let's start with his preparation. First is his emblem configuration. These are two kinds of emblem setups you can use when using Chou. Of course, to start things off, you must know your role, whether you will be a fighter or a tank. Suppose you needed to be a fighter, in that case, you must have the damage ability to kill your enemies or push towers. And also, if you are needed to be a tank of your team, you must have durability. Let's say you're a fighter or a damager. Then I recommend that you use an assassin emblem to complement the damage ability of Chou. This assassin emblem consists of level 3 agility for you to have extra movement speed to chase down enemies or outrunning them when they're chasing you. It also has level 3 invasion to have an additional physical penetration to help you ignore the enemy's defensive abilities. And lastly, the high and dry for the talent. As I said before, this talent is best in one-on-one situations. If you choose Chou as your hero, you will definitely hunt enemies alone. Now, in the other hand, if you are a tank, I recommend that you use the tank emblem, of course, to have the durability you need to be comfortable enough to engage with the enemies. It consists of level 3 vitality that will give you extra HP. Next is level 3 fortress if you have enemies that rely on physical damage, and level 3 purity if most of your enemies rely on magic damage. And lastly, concussive blast for the talent. This talent will help your teammates kill the enemies much faster. Next is for his spells. Flicker is quite the fixed spell for Chou. It really complements his skills and helps him have a higher chance of ambushing or killing enemies. Now let's talk about the effective builds for Chou. The first is for the boots. Take note that it is situational. You have to choose between the tough boots or the warrior boots depending on the enemy's lineup. If your opponents depend on physical damage, choose the warrior boots for additional physical defense. But if your enemies are relying on magic damage, choose the tough boots for extra magic defense. The next items is for the fighter build for Chou. First is the endless battle to gain massive stats, cooldown reduction, and extra damage every after using a skill. Second is the blade of Heptases for additional physical penetration and extra damage every 5 seconds when Chou doesn't damage anything or is not damaged by anyone. The item's passive skill will be a massive help for Chou to kill soft or squishy enemies quickly. Third item is the Blade of Despair. You know what the BOD can do to increase your damage ability. Also, it gives Chou extra movement speed that will be very crucial to him. Next is for the fourth item. It can either be a defensive item or an offensive one. You have to analyze whether you need extra damage or when you need to be durable. In case you need more damage, I suggest that you choose the Wind Talk that will give you extra attack speed, or the Malefic Roar for another physical penetration and give you the ability to push towers effortlessly. But when you are in need of durability, you can go for the Brute Force Breastplate, so whenever you cast a skill or use your basic attack, your physical and magical defense will increase by 4 points that can be stacked up to 5 times. And for the fifth and last item, I will urge you to go for Immortality to have that extra crucial life for the late game. And now let us go to the builds when you are required to be the tank of your team. This one is hard because the defensive items mostly depends on the enemy's lineup and their items. But I will give you some general build that you can use when using Chou as a tank. The first item is the Cursed Helmet. This item will help you gain more damaging ability through its passive that will magically damage nearby enemies. It can help you and your teammates kill minions, monsters, and enemies much faster. The second item is the Antique Cuirass. This item will give you massive stats of health and physical defense plus HP regeneration. It also has a passive that every time an enemy will attack you, their physical damage will be lessened by 10% that can be stacked up to 3 times. The next item is the Brute Force Breastplate. I already explained this item earlier, so I don't really need to explain it anymore. since he is a hero that you can be confident with his physical attack. The next item is the Athena's Shield. This item will give you massive stats of health points, magic defense, and HP regeneration. It's like a magic defense version of the Antikyrias. Aside from that, this item will give you a shield with the help of its passive. And lastly, for the fifth item is the Immortality. Again, this item is crucial, especially in late game, where anything can happen and the game's momentum changes a lot. Now that we're done with the preparations, now let us move on to his skills. First is his passive skill, the Only Fast. Chou's passive skill is quite powerful when you complement it with damage items. For every 8 yards he moves, his next basic attack will deal 200% of his normal damage and slows down the target. These facts only means that Chou must be constantly played by moving around, and his abilities can really benefit from it. Next, for his first skill, the Jeet Kune Do. Chou moves and punches 3 times with the final hit, which is a slam to the ground that knocks enemy heroes into the air. This skill gives Chou mobility, excellent crowd control, and refreshing his second ability. It is an essential part of his kit, which makes him a versatile hero. Next is his second skill, the Shun Po. This skill is a short dash for Chou to move in or out of the team fights quickly. Besides that, the Shun Po gives Chou immunity from being controlled for a short second and extra armor. Both perks are significant for hunting, especially in the early game. And lastly, for his ultimate skill, the Way of the Dragon. Chou casts a roundhouse kick to knock back the enemies and deal damage. You can use it again to chase up enemies in mid-air to deal another pack of damage. This skill is one of the best crowd control ultimate skills in Mobile Legends and is one of the reasons why many pro players favor Chou. This ultimate skill can reach the enemy's mages or marksmen in the backlines quite easily because his other abilities give him the mobility that he needs to get there. Now let's talk about the tips and tricks in using Chou effectively. The first tip that I can give you is know when to be aggressive and when to be not. Always analyze if you can harass your enemies or when your enemy has more firepower than you. And of course, if you have the advantage, even with the slightest, take the opportunity to get the enemies uncomfortable. The second is that you can always kill the enemy's main damager. May it be an assassin, a marksman, or a mage. Chou can kill soft heroes quickly, even if it is in the backline of the enemies. And that connects to our third tip, which is to use Flicker wisely. We have encountered many players that use Flicker even if they are unsure if they can reach or kill the enemy. You guys have to take note that Flicker has a long cooldown duration, so you really have to make it count. The next tip is to push many towers if you can. Chou can be very deadly in terms of going after the towers. He has a lot of damage, and his passive skill also helps to destroy towers much faster. And for the last tip, I urge you to be a consistent runner or wanderer, especially when you are a tank of your team. Chou can be so versatile and maybe the hardest one to kill in the game. That's why you have to take advantage of that and always look out for the bush for possible ambushes and continuously harass your enemies. And another bonus tip, some of you might already know this trick. How you do this is that you use the first skill before using the flicker in a specified direction to control the enemies much faster. Because using the old combo can be dodged by the enemies with mobility skills like Ling and Lancelot. You should also know that you can dodge enemies' control skills using his second skill with the right timing. And I think that's pretty much it. Remember that this is just a guide on using Chou efficiently, but the best teacher I can recommend you is experience. So play a lot and learn from it. So what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below and don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and don't forget to visit yugatech.com/gaming for more news, tips, and tricks. It's your boy Enzo, and stay safe.